So now that we got our model builder set up, let's get into actually using some of the tools and our model builder. So I'm just going to drag my model builder over here, maybe to the left side of my screen. And then I also notice kind of in the background here, I'm still in layout view. So I need to go back to my data view. And I'm just going to pan this map over here to the right and maybe zoom out a little bit so that we can see what some of the output is. And you're free to, organize your interface any way that you wish. But for now, the way that I'm going to do it, I'm going to kind of put my model builder here in the middle, and then have my other things here to the left and my map over here to the right. In this example, we will try to extract subsurface information using the soils data. We will use depth to lithic bedrock as a map of interest. So what we're just simply saying is that we're interested in knowing where on our Marlette Park site are all the locations of lithic bedrock. So in this example, we will create a raster map from vector data illustrating the locations of where the lithic bedrock resides. So the first step, obviously, is we need to convert our polygons. So remember, the soils map is polygon data. It is vector-based data to a raster. And while we're at it, we want to be able to show that where all the locations of lithic bedrock resides. So I'm going to go over here and just kind of turn some data on and off. I'm just interested in my soils here. Don't need my source. I'm going to make my AOI a little bit smaller here. And I need to find the tool that will allow me to convert vector-based data into raster-based data. So the first tool that we get to use turns out to not be inside of the Spatial Analyst tools or inside the Analyst tools, but inside of the Conversion tools. So we want to go from a vector to a raster. So let's see, we have a to-raster category here. So this is a polygon, so we want to go from polygon to a raster. So I'm going to drag and drop that tool into my model builder. So all I did was just simply drag and drop a tool from the ARC catalog, or the ARC toolbox, sorry, into my model builder, and I just kind of drag it up here to the top. Notice that when I roll my mouse over it, it kind of tells me what all the settings are, what the parameters are inside of this tool. This little box thing here, usually the box symbol indicates that it's a tool, and the little round bubble to the right side of the arrow indicates that this is the output. We don't have an input, so there's nothing here in front. And when a tool is white like this, it usually means that it doesn't have enough information to run. And in this case, we don't have an input, so it can't run. So let's go ahead and grab our soils data straight from our table of contents and drag and drop that in here. So now that we have now we have an input. But it's not connected to my tool. So this is where our connect tool comes in, where we can click and drag and release on top of the tool, and we can input this soils as two types of input. We can input it as an input feature, or we can input this data as a cell size. Well, we want it to be an input feature, so I'll click input feature. Now notice the tool turns yellow and the output turns green, indicating that we have enough information now to run our model. But do we want to run our model now? Actually, we don't, because we don't know where it's going to save to, and we may want to configure other settings. So let's go ahead and right click on this and go to open. So I'm right clicking on the tool and going to open and taking a look at some of the settings here. So right now we have input feature, which is soils. We have value fields. So if I click this drop down, and what we actually want to do is create a map from depth to restrictive layer, and the code is D2RL. And if you're wondering what all of those codes are, I recommend hitting Web Soil Survey, and some of these codes are kind of deciphered there. And then the output raster, I want it to go into my geodatabase, and I can see that it's going to do just that. And I probably don't want to name it this really huge long thing. Remember how ArcGIS is very particular about long names. So I'm going to call it something different, maybe D2RLL, depth to restrictive layer, kind of like how it's named over here but without the underscore. Then here it's talking about cell assignment type. Sometimes you'll see a lot of settings that you don't quite know what it's talking about, and what this really has to do with is where it's going to take the information inside of a cell. So remember, a raster is a series of grids, and we're basically, by setting this setting here, we're telling GIS where we want the cell assignment to take place, or what type of cell assignment that we want to use. So down here on the bottom we have a show help, and by clicking show help and having our cursor inside of here, it's going to give us some more information about this particular field and what all of the options are. So we have maximum area, maximum combined, and I'm actually going to leave it at the default at cell center. Next we have the priority field, and here we have several options as well, and I'm going to leave this one at default as well. The next one, where it says cell size, it's set to 8.3, and really what this has to do with is kind of the dimensions of each of the cells. So this is the size of this particular soil map cell. I'm actually going to decrease this to a 1, and I know by doing that it's going to make up some information. So what that basically means is, let's just say that this is one cell, and then we have another cell here, and we have another cell here, kind of drawing it crooked. And let's just say, for example, the dimensions of our cells are 8 by 8. And by changing the cell size to 1 by 1, we're going to have to make up some data in between here. So it might look something like this. And each of these little cells are 1 by 1s. And of course, in between here, this is where data is kind of made up. So we kind of need to be a little bit aware of that. In our situation, for the type of analysis that we're going to run later, this is really not going to really matter to us. And that thing there where it kind of makes up data, it usually happens around the edges, not so much in the middle, and that's why it's not really going to matter to us. Alright, so now once all of this is set, we can go in and change other fields here, but we're not going to do that. We're going to leave this at the way it is right now, since this is pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Once I'm done clicking OK, I can roll my mouse over this, and it gives me a little preview of what all the settings are. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this and choose Run. And while it's running, you notice the tool will turn red. A little box pops open, letting you know if it's completed successfully or not. And notice that after the tool is done running, a little drop shadow appears underneath. This indicates the tool was successfully ran. I can click Close here, and sometimes the output is automatically added to the data frame and sometimes not. In this case it's not, so I'll need to right click here on my output and choose Add to Display. So now I'm just going to minimize my model builder, and when I minimize it, it just goes down here towards the lower left. And I can see my depth to restrictive layer map over here. I'm just going to move this on top of my soils map. And I can see that these are basically two types of depths. I have 127 and 201 centimeters. Not really sure if that's either in inches or centimeters. Some places where you read it might say inches, and some places centimeters. But we're not too much focused in this particular course about if it's in inches or centimeters. We're just mostly interested in extracting maps right now. So down here at the bottom I have the Identify tool. I can click here, and notice that when I clicked, it ended up grabbing my area of interest because I have this here topmost layer set. So I'm going to change this to my soils depth to restrictive layer and click again. And there I'm grabbing 201. So all the green areas are 201 and all the black areas are 127. So this is how you can create a map of your soil conditions.